This is the last in a series of videos in which I'm repairing this ADM3 dumb terminal. This is a fairly interesting example of the ADM3 in that it's got the upgraded third-party board fitted. We'll have a look inside in a few minutes, but it was a fairly simple repair to the actual main board. The main issue with this was that the tube had been smashed, and this is the original tube out of it. You can see that the end of the neck has been smashed off, so this tube is history. It's obviously no longer usable, so I'll be disposing of this, but I had to find a solution. Now, you can still find tubes of this type, but here in the UK they're hard to find, very expensive. And also the control board that's fitted to the ADM3 is a very common board for the period, and I come across a lot of tubes with very severe tube burn or screen burn, and quite a few broken ones. So I've been looking for a while for an alternative solution to repairing them. You also get a lot with cataracts. Cataracts are relatively easy to fix, but even so, once you've done that, quite often the tube has severe screen burn. So what I've done here is taken the tube out of an old black and white TV and try to shoehorn it into the ADM3. So we'll have a quick look inside the unit now. I'll get this tube out of the way. We can see what the final solution is, or almost final solution. I've still got a few adjustments to make yet, but now getting very close to the final solution that I will be using for this particular unit. So looking inside, you can see this is much simpler than the standard ADM3. The standard ADM3 board fills this entire space, but this unit's got a separate keyboard and the smaller main board, and it's got a dedicated, basically a dedicated terminal control IC, ROM, bit of RAM, a few glue logic chips, very simple voltage regulator system, and then on the keyboard, a very simple keyboard interface. We've got a simple microcontroller, and that does all the scanning for the keys. I still have to clean this keyboard yet. You can see it's still very dirty, but that's one of the last jobs I have to do. A few final adjustments to make for the monitor, so I'll just move the camera across and you'll see the final solution I came up with for the monitor tube replacement. So as you can see, the layout is very similar to the original. All the connections are identical. The only thing I've done is replace the tube, of course, and had to change the base. This unit, this tube has a different base, so I used the base off the old TV, and I've changed the value of a few components in here as well. Still got a few things to change yet, just to get slightly more width and height, but pretty much there now. Ideally, I need to change this inductor. It's not quite the right value, and it's not really giving us good linearity as we're reaching the extremes of height, so this really needs to be a larger value. Everything else is working fairly well. The width is fine. I've got it reduced a bit at the moment, and I've been slowly increasing the supply voltage to bring it up to the 18 or 19 volts it will normally run at, and then I've been using the thermal camera to keep an eye on everything. It's actually running a bit cooler than the original. It's using less power than the original, which was a bit of a surprise. I was expecting it to use a lot more, but it's kind of in the nature of inductive loads. If you get them fairly close to optimized, then you get a lot of the energy back out of the inductor that you put into it, and so they can be quite efficient systems, even if the peak currents are quite high. The mounting for the tube was very straightforward, as it turned out. That's what I thought would be quite complicated, but all I had to do was make a couple of stepped washers, and then the whole thing just clamped in, and is a very nice secure fit. And one of the nice things with this is, as you can see, the tube it's about 4 inches shorter than the original. The original tube came right out to about here, and that was the problem, that somebody hadn't put this board back in. This metal plate at the end most likely impinged on the tube and smashed the neck off. That can't happen now because there's a lot of space in here, so we've now got all this free space, and so it should also future-proof it against that, should anyone take the screws out of the board again. It's also a lot lighter. It's about 1 kilo lighter than the original, and well, that's not too important. It is quite nice when you want to carry this thing around, and this thing will now probably be used for my kind of go-to dumb terminal, just simply because it's easier to move around. Okay, we'll get it closed up, we'll power it up, and just check that it's fully functional. I've got the ADM powered up. I'll just dim the lights so that you can see the display a bit more clearly. I've also got it connected to a PC running a terminal emulator, so I'll bring that up into the corner of the screen. And what I'll do now is press some keys, and you can see that we're getting both the local characters and the characters appearing on the remote terminal. I've got the remote terminal set to echo characters locally, so I'll press some keys on the PC keyboard and we should see those characters received by the ADM3. And as you can see, the ADM3 is working just fine. I'll turn the light back on. So clearly the ADM is working. It can transmit data, it can receive data. The extension port works, I've tried that, and all the keys work, the contrast control works. However, if you're familiar with using terminals, any sort of terminal really, then you'll know that you normally need to make adjustments such as baud rate, parity, that sort of thing. And you will also notice there are no configuration switches on the main board in this unit. And with a normal ADM there are a couple of banks of configuration switches at the back of the main board, and also some configuration switches underneath a plate that's normally fitted in this location. All we have on this machine is a single push button, but if you push the button it doesn't do anything. So I kind of figured it was pushing this button while pressing other keys, kind of a combination would take us into a menu to configure the terminal. But I don't have a user manual, don't have a service manual, no schematics, so I just started systematically going through various key combinations. And with terminals there are some kind of fairly commonly used combinations that you can use, and they're the ones I started with. And sure enough, I found there is a menu in this. So I'll just dim the light again so you can see this. What I found was if I press Control Shift and then the key, the button, then it takes us into the menu, and there are quite a few options as it turns out in this unit for configuring the system. So the first one is HDX or FDX, presumably half duplex or full duplex. I then found if you hold the control key and press comma, it toggles between the various options. And then if I press line feed, it takes us on to the next option. So we have duplex mode, we then have the baud rate, and the options we have are from 75 up to 19,200. I've currently got it set on 9,600. We then have the number of data bits, 7 or 8. Parity, enabled yes or no. Parity, odd or even. It's not a smart menu, by the way, so even if you turn parity off, you still get this option to set odd or even, so presumably it just ignores any settings that it doesn't require. But the menu isn't smart, it doesn't remove things that are not required. Next option is the number of stop bits. The value of bit 8. So if you're using 7 bits, you may still need to send bit 8, and this will let you set the value. Especially if you're receiving data, it might be that it's always a 1 or always a 0. EIA mode, handshaking mode. So this is the usual hardware, X on, X off, that sort of thing. I've got it set to none. Lowercase displays, this is where it gets interesting. In the usual ADM, the lowercase characters are an optional ROM that you have to fit. In here you can just switch it on. So if I set that to on, and line feed, we get lowercase enabled. I don't know why there are 2 options for this. It might be it's to allow remote toggling of lowercase, but I'm not really quite sure about that one. Caps lock enabled. Yes or no. Auto new line. Do you want it to automatically generate a new line character at the end of the line? Return. So what does the return key do? By default it's just carriage return, so it moves to the start of the line, and then you have to press line feed if you want to go down a line. But I'm going to change that, and we'll go to carriage return and a line feed. And keyboards locale, you can set it to US, UK, German or French. I'll leave it set to US or the keys what makes sense. If we set it to UK, then the hash character will show as a pound, a UK pound currency character. That's why this character is sometimes called a pound sign. Next option. I'm looking through the viewfinder of the camera here, by the way, so I'm just trying to figure out what some of these say. Refresh rate we can set at 50 or 60 Hz. I explained this in a previous video. This is just to synchronize the display with the local mains frequency. It prevents undulation. But with this new tube, we don't need to worry about it. I'm going to leave it at 60 Hz. Gives a better image, and we don't get any undulation because it's a nice stable setup. Next option is whether we want key clicks, so will it click every time we press a key. I'd normally have this off, but just for fun we'll turn that on. Auto repeat. There's a repeat key on the keyboard. If you hold that in and then press and hold a key, it will repeat the character. This option allows you to have that happen automatically, so if you hold the key in, after about a second it will start to auto repeat. So we'll turn that on. It's a bit like a modern PC. Margin bell enabled, so as it gets towards the end of the line, do we want a warning? Keyboard lock enabled, yes or no? SOSI. Next option is clear screen. Sometimes you want to turn that off. You don't want to accidentally hit a clear screen key and lose everything you typed, and although in a normal dumb terminal it shouldn't matter, it can matter if you want a record of what you're typing, and also in smart terminals it can be quite annoying to clear a lot of data you've just entered before you've sent it. Okay, next option is attributes. Do you want character attributes? And this is kind of now moving into the realm of smart terminal, whether you want certain attributes to be attached to specific characters. Full screen reverse, you can reverse the entire screen if you want to. Screensaver, fairly obvious what that does. It just turns off the beam effectively after, or blanks a screen after a certain period. Pity a lot more terminals didn't have that. We'd have far less screen burn on the old tubes. Scroll enabled, whether you want it to run in the kind of top down or bottom up mode for entering text. Cursor control, if you want to be able to move the cursor around using the cursor keys. Program mode, and this is kind of smart terminal territory now. This turns it into what amounts to a smart terminal. And whether we want the here is key to be functional. What's the space key going to do? Is it going to enter or insert a space character, or just advance through the text? So that's a bit like the kind of inserts option on a modern keyboard. And then back to the start. So if we now exit the menu the same way that we entered it, notice now that we're getting lowercase characters and a beep. If we enter return, it won't just do a carriage return, it will do a carriage return and a line feed. So as you can see, it's now functioning like a fairly advanced terminal, so we've kind of turned it into a smart terminal, apart from we've left programming off. But you can see that it's quite a capable terminal now. It's turned an ADM3 dumb terminal in what amounts to a fairly flexible smart terminal. And also all the options are available without having to open the unit up. It was always a bit annoying with the ADM3 to have to open it for certain settings. A lot you could get to through this panel, but some you had to open the machine up. The only thing so far is I haven't found a way to permanently save these. If I power this off and back on again, the settings default to what we started with. So I don't know if there's another key combination to write those into an internal EEPROM within the processor, but certainly at the moment I haven't found that. If you know what that is, then please leave a comment. Turn the light back on. Okay, so that's it for this series. I've got a bit of work to do, but I won't bore you with the details. It's just really cleaning the keyboard, making an insert plate to fill in this blank, and then just finishing expanding the display, probably another centimetre, and then I'll have this unit complete. Very nice unit. I quite like the additional features it's got. A lot smarter than the original ADM3. Not quite as much fun to work on. I prefer the discrete layout of the original ADM3, but nevertheless this is quite a nice unit and will make quite a nice addition to the workshop.